Light work. Every summer, Sodor welcomes hundreds of holidaymakers. There's so much to see and do. Visitors love to camp in the valleys, sunbathe on the beaches, and, of course, ride the many famous railways. Now it was late August, and the tourism season was winding down. All over the island, people were packing their cases and preparing to head home. But before the month was out, there was still one big event that everyone was looking forward to: the Bank Holiday Monday Firework Party. With the show starting just before midnight, the Fat Controller always puts on a splendid display. There will be Catherine wheels, Roman candles, and even sparkling dragons. But early that morning, the Sodor lighthouse keeper awoke to a worrying discovery.
"Bless my barnacles,"
he exclaimed.
"The bulb's gone. That won't do. After all, the ships at sea don't stop for a jolly old knees-up like everyone else. I'll have to get a replacement before tonight."
He quickly telephoned the supply yard. "Not to worry," the man answered. "There were some spares delivered only last week. We'll have a new one with you soon." The lorry made good speed. That is, until it reached the coastal road. "Well, this takes the biscuit," grumbled the driver. "What sort of workmen start digging up the road on a bank holiday?"
"Very efficient ones,"
suggested the lorry. "We'll have to go back. There's no other way to reach the lighthouse by road." Then the driver spied a nearby phone box. "Hang on, I think I know who to call."
"I'll give up. Who?"
"Who does everyone on this island usually turn to when they're in trouble?" "The Fat Controller, of course."
"We're supposed to be taking work from those engines, not giving it to them. That's really made my day, that has."
The Fat Controller was at home when he got the call. "What about Harold?" he asked at first. "Vintage air shown the mainland, you say?" "I see." "Very well," he went on. "In a light of the urgent situation, we must try. A delicate load such as this requires a steady engine. I'll send Edward to cut the bulb." Edward was delighted when he heard the news. "I enjoy running this branch as much as any engine," he said. "But a trip along the main line should make a pleasant change." "Just make sure you'll finish in time for the party tonight," laughed Ben. "Yeah, won't be the same without you telling us to behave," Bill teased. Donald was more serious. "Hey, those nae mind," he advised. "I say there's nae sense in making a rush job of it. After all, it's only some silly flashes and bangs in the sky. Take care." "No fear," smiled Edward. "My rushing days are long past. Anyway, I'm sure I can take it steady and be back well before the party starts." "Go on, steady Eddie! Do us proud!" the twins called after him. They began to giggle, but a sharp frown from Donald sent them scurrying away. On arrival, Edward found the yard manager looking flustered. "It's ridiculous," he fumed. "The Fat Controller rigs up out of the blue and asks me to find a way of transporting this very special load. Look at the size of it! I've got coal trains and steel shipments to worry about. Never mind things like that." "We'll be off as soon as you have it loaded," interrupted the fireman impatiently. "That's the thing. No spare vans for it. Henry took all our extras for the Flying Kipper this morning." "Oh, I'm sure it'll be safe enough on a flatbed," suggested Edward. The yard manager reluctantly agreed. At first, no one noticed the flatbed coupling break. Edward thought it was a bump in the track and steamed cheerfully on. As for the guard, he was too busy in his van doing a crossword puzzle. They hadn't gone much further when, "Look out! We've lost our train!" yelled the fireman. In a panic, the driver slammed on the brakes. This was a big mistake. Edward's crew got out to survey the damage, and the guard staggered from his van to join them. "What happened?" he groaned. "It felt like the express ran into us." The fireman carefully prized open the crate with a shovel, and the three men peered inside. "As I thought," said the driver glumly. "That jolt damaged the bulb. It shattered to pieces." "On the bright side, that's given me 10 down. Shattered," grinned the guard. "Never mind your crossword," snapped the fireman. "Let's go before another train really does run into us." Edward cautiously puffed back the way he came. He hadn't had an accident like that for years, and he felt rather shaken.
Our fault,
exclaimed the yard manager when they returned.
that old flatbed was waiting for repairs. Stupid shunter didn't notice till after you left.
This made Edward feel a little happier. A replacement load was quickly organised.
Do take care with that one,
warned the yard manager, as Edward steamed away again. Now, Edward may have been in good spirits, but he was still an old engine, and tired more easily than his friends. He'd already travelled a long way that day, and yet seemed to have gotten nowhere. "All this toing and froing," he yawned. "Normally I'd have finished my afternoon passenger run. I'll be taking a nap around now." Edward closed his eyes, only for a few seconds. In an instant he felt himself swerve over some points. The train rattled down a bumpy, overgrown siding.
Ouch!
Cried a small voice.
No need for that. We're not being troublesome anymore.
Right in the middle of a lovely dream, too. Edward had run into some old trucks. "Sorry to disturb you," said Edward. "You can go back to sleep now. I wish I could." "Should we check inside again?" the fireman wondered. "Don't bother. I heard glass breaking as we stopped just now. I think we all know what that was." The driver reversed Edward down the siding. "Sorry, old chap," he sighed. "It looks like back to the yard again." Edward groaned. "It really was my fault this time. I shouldn't have taken my eyes off the track." "Rubbish. It's that blooming signalman I'd like to have a word with. He can't have been expecting us." They reached the junction and had to wait. "Sometimes I wonder," Edward huffed to no one in particular, "how much simpler things would be if we engines could set the points ourselves." "Hey, be careful what you wish for," chuckled his driver.
Broken? Again? I see.
The yard manager looked dismayed to see Edward back so soon. He disappeared into his office looking pale and muttering something about costing the railways a fortune. Even so, the workmen dutifully set about loading Edward's flatbed once more. "All this trouble to change a light bulb," chuckled one. "Can't they make do with a candle for now?" Edward didn't laugh at the cheery banter. He hurried off as soon as the guard signalled. It was getting later and later in the afternoon. All Edward wanted to do now was be with his friends. He knew he had to finish his job first. Finally, "Hurrah!" cheered Edward. There's Brendan Docks ahead. We'll be on the coastal run in no time now. But the docks were very busy. All the fruit tracks were blocked with engines, keen to have their trucks loaded. Edward had to wait behind Percy on the inside line, who was collecting more fireworks for the display. The dockmen were being very careful and taking a long time. "Hurry it up, Clanky!" James snorted. "I need time to have a washdown before the party tonight."
"Huh? I didn't even get an invite to this rotten party,"
Cranky retorted, and seemed to slow down even more. Rosie cut in to stop the argument. "What are you collecting anyway, James?" she asked. "A power generator for the refreshments tent. I expect it'll be very big and heavy. No trouble for me, of course." At last, Percy puffed off, and Edward made to follow. Neither got very far, and Percy stalled suddenly in a huge burst of steam. "Sorry!" he called back to Edward. "I don't know what's wrong." Then there was trouble again. Edward had stopped right alongside James, just as Cranky swung around with his load. James was right. It was very big and heavy. "What have you done?" shrieked James. "I'm over here!"
"Bah! You useless little bugs all look the same from this height,"
the crane grumbled. Salty shunted Percy away to a siding, while Cranky transferred the generator over to James's train. All that remained on poor Edward's flatbed was a mess of splintered wood and broken glass. "Oh my," sniffed James. "That's not much of a special, is it?" Perhaps it was lucky for James that Edward didn't hear him. Much to Edward's surprise, the yard was now empty. There were no people or engines about at all. "They must have all gone home early." "That's a relief," sighed the driver. "Let's get this loaded quickly and be on our way." Presently, Edward felt water drumming on his dome. His crew had just finished as the rain began to fall heavily. "Oh, that's all we need," Edward groaned. How could such a simple job turn into such a disaster? His driver tried to rally him. "Now don't let it get you down. Everyone has a run of bad luck like this sometimes." "No matter how old or wise they are," added the fireman. "You're right," huffed Edward. "I've beaten worse than this before, and I can do it again. One more try." The old engine gritted his gears and bravely headed off into the downpour. Edward made his way without further mishap, and by the time they reached the coastal track, the weather had brightened up. Good, he thought. Any more rain and the party might have been cancelled. I hope the others are enjoying themselves. Edward knew now they were going to be very late, but that didn't seem to matter anymore. Instead, he marvelled at the picturesque seafront scenery rolling steadily by. It was a view he didn't get to take in very often. At last, the red and white striped lighthouse loomed large in the distance. The anxious lighthouse keeper greeted them warmly.
"Oh, thank you,"
said the keeper.
"I thought you weren't coming."
"But we had one or two delays on the way," grinned Edward. "Nothing too serious, though." The keeper helped the men unload the crate.
"There,"
he said.
"all that's left now is to get this great heavy thing upstairs. 200 steps on that last coat."
Edward's driver and fireman looked at each other, sighed and shrugged. "We'll give you a hand if you like," offered the driver.
"Oh, would you? Oh, that's very kind. Carefully though, those bulbs break very easily."
Edward's crew chuckled knowingly as they followed the keeper inside. Meanwhile, Edward dozed as he waited patiently in the golden evening sun. I may have missed the party, he told himself, but I'll sleep well tonight knowing that lighthouse is there to keep boats like that one safe at sea. It was dark by the time they set off for home. Edward crawled wearily up Gordon's Hill, thinking of his nice cosy shed. But as he reached the crest, he suddenly screeched to a stop, amazed. Come on, Edward, called the driver. We're all tired, but this is no place for a... He trailed off and stared out at the cab. The night sky ahead was lit up with flashes of every colour imaginable. It was the fireworks display. The fireman poked his head out too. Well, I'll be, he exclaimed. This must be the best view on the island. The fireworks weren't the only reason he'd stopped. But shining brightest of them all were the beams from the Sodor Lighthouse.